in 2012, normally our best years for red are the warm years.
Yes.
So they're the years where we get that long growing season. So not too hot in January, steady in February, really like that Indian summer in March, what we call it Indian summer, which is summer that goes through into the autumn. That steady weather, no rainfall, no storms, and it just allows those red grapes that ripen later, like Merlot and Cabernet, to have time to really develop the flavour concentration. Because what can happen up there in the cooler years is that it gets cold too quickly at the end of the season. In 2012, not only was it not too hot in January, which is also a problem, we had just warm weather in January, it was nice, but we also had this beautiful long autumn to summer where the weather was, there was no rush to bring the fruit in. We weren't worried about it. It was just ripening beautifully. And then, Shiraz, Cabernet and Merlot, those years were all brilliant. That's the sort of vintage I wish we had all the time.
Yeah.
Having time, it's, of course we want the grapes to get ripe, but if they ripen too fast, they're not very interesting. We don't get the complexity of the flavour. We don't get the concentration of the fruit.
Yeah.
And what happens if you don't get that, if you try and age the wine for many years, you'll find that the fruit just doesn't make the distance. It's lovely for a long time, but you'll get to sort of 7 and 8 years old and maybe they'll start to fade. Wine like that is not fading.
Yeah.
Nice settled weather so that you get good flowering and good fruit set. The summer not too hot so that nothing is getting ripe too fast. It's just slow and steady, and then a lovely long, into March, nice dry warm weather, but not too hot but not getting too cold. Because we're 850 metres above sea level.
Yes.
It doesn't take long into the autumn before you start getting really cold nights and even coolish days. Now for red grapes to ripen, you need to be hitting 23, 24 degrees during the day for ripening to continue. And if you get into March in Granite Belt and it's dropping down to 12 overnight and it's only getting to 20, 21 during the day, the ripening really drops off. So we need not too hot in January, but definitely some warmth still in March. And then just avoiding storms and rain. So we just have that little bit of temperature increase. So the same thing that's happening in Bordeaux. So in Bordeaux, traditionally, they had a lot of years where the alcohols were a bit low and the fruit was a bit green. They've had probably about 10 years of really good vintages now because it has got warmer in Bordeaux. And so, it's the challenges that we sometimes have with Merlot and Cabernet to have a long enough growing season to get them ripe. If it does get just a little bit warmer, because we've got the elevation, I think that does protect us from too much extreme heat. So that's a big advantage for us. I think that there might be more years where it's easier to get them really fully ripe and have that quality where we can confidently put them away for 10 years and then bring them out and say, hey, look at this, look how good this is. So what we found with the Granite Belt, which I'm not saying that they're similar particularly to Bordeaux wines, but there's a similarity in that a lot of Bordeaux wines don't really start to look good until they're 5, 6, 7 years old. And I've always noticed that with Bordeaux varieties in the Granite Belt, is they look nice when they're young, but you really need to have that patience. And once they hit 5 years old, then they just start getting better and better and better. So we had a problem at one point where our wine was so popular that we couldn't keep up, and we were selling our red vintages a little bit too young, and it was a shame. And I think this is a really good chance for us to get back in balance now. We've luckily got some holdings of some older wines that we can show people and say, here's the reward that you get for having some cellar time. And hopefully that means that the people that are buying the younger wines will actually go, this is a cellaring wine, we can put this away with confidence that it's really going to deliver.
Okay.
Open it up and pour. So the first thing you notice, this is I'm just going to adjust so we can see on the camera, this is an 11-year-old wine, but look how much ruby red is still in that wine. So a lot of Merlots at this age are really sort of quite brick coloured and garnet. This one still has quite a lot of lovely deep ruby tones in it. So that straight away, you know, we can use our eyes and trust our eyes. That straight away tells you that it is still well and truly alive as a wine. So I'll just give it a little swirl and let it open up. It's been in the bottle for a long time, so we'll let it wake up for us. So one of the things with older wines is sometimes you might want to give them a little bit of air, particularly if they're under the stealth enclosure, just to let them open up and start revealing their aromas. But on the other hand, you don't actually want to decant and leave it for hours and hours and hours, because when the wines are older, they are a bit more delicate and they can change quite quickly. So when we have a little smell of this wine, and straight away you get those gorgeous fruitcake notes. So all the beautiful dried fruits, the cooked fruits, the cinnamon and cloves, even a little bit of sort of savoury herb coming through. There's still some lovely soft vanilla and oak as well, but very much in balance. There's plenty of fruit to cope with that oak. And we're very careful with oaking our wines in the Granite Belt, because we know that we don't necessarily we're not making sort of huge Barossa style reds here, and we don't want to pack too much oak into them. So we're very careful with the aging of the oak. We don't use too much new oak, and we don't leave them in too long. You just smell really good. I haven't tasted this wine for a little while, so on the palate, the first thing you notice is the texture. This wine, Merlot, is a soft plush wine anyway, and as it ages, it has the style of tannins. There's a beautiful sort of smooth, ripe tannins. They're getting softer and more velvety and more powdery, and so it's an effortless wine to drink. You know, it's not aggressive, it's not drying. It is a very dry wine, but it's not drying inside your mouth. And again, we still have fresh fruit. So we have beautiful fresh plums, fresh strawberries, blackberries, but then you're also sort of verging into some jammy fruits and even sort of tertiary flavours like our prunes and our spices, maybe a little bit of tarriness, a little bit of cigar box, really spiciness, but just absolutely gorgeous wine. But you can see and you can smell there's plenty of life in this wine yet. So it's certainly not a wine that we're saying quick drink it. It'll be okay for several more years yet, even probably another 5 to 8 years. It'll definitely hold up. So yeah, it's just delightful thinking about what this fruit was like when it came in, to see how it's evolved. So yeah, absolutely gorgeous wine. I think it's probably a very versatile wine, actually. Obviously red wine, red meat, we always talk about, and of course it will be absolutely beautiful with beef. You know, any sort of roasted meats or grilled meats is going to be lovely with, but I also think it will be a bit more versatile with that. It would be very nice with game, so venison, even something like duck. It's still light enough on its feet. It's not a big, heavy, alcoholic wine. It's light enough on its feet that you could eat food that has some spice, or some sort of different flavorings. We often talk about umami being a difficult thing to pair with wine, but I think out of all the red wines, I think Merlot can blend with foods with umami flavors better than anything. And it's not too alcoholic either, which I think is, you know, sometimes Merlot, especially in a very warm season, can be very, very heavy and alcoholic, but this wine is not like that at all. So that gives it versatility with food as well. So yeah, I think a really, really versatile wine. It's not going to overpower food, but it's a concentrated enough wine. It won't be overpowered by food as well. So yeah, very versatile. So